compared to the male population. And when Buddhism moved from ancient India to Tibet, it's again similar to the situation. The majority of women didn't have that much interest in spiritual practice. When they stayed at home, it was mainly the men that engaged in the spiritual practice. But apart from that, cultural difference, there's really no reason why one should be a teacher and one shouldn't. And also, with the sheer volume, for example, in Tibet, the volume of monasteries which were around overshadowed the kind of nunneries and the kind of hermitages which were frequented by female practitioners. So it's important here to know that there were great women teachers and practitioners, but it's just that in the course of history, their perhaps records were not as well known as the male practitioners. But the real cause lies in the kind of development, cultural development of Asia, within which the male population engaged in spiritual practice more than the female population. That's the kind of cause of why there are more male practitioners than female ones. So there's just a little bit of the text. If I'd have hurried and we didn't have this brief time for questions, I would have finished the text today. But we have a couple of hours together tomorrow morning, so I'm going to conclude this. In addition to that, I'm going to give the brief meditation instruction on the 8 verses of mind training, which has great kind of practical relationship to our day-to-day life. So I think that would be useful. So we'll do that tomorrow morning.
Atisha and
So initially, adjust our attitude to receive the teachings, thinking that just as far as space extends, existing within that space are countless individuals in a state of dissatisfaction, and in order to separate or liberate each and every one of them from that state, I myself must achieve the state of perfection in as short a time as possible. And in order to usher this in, I'm going to receive the teaching, which is a commentary on Atisha's jeweled Rosary, and also on the 8 verses of mind training. With this attitude, let us continue.
친구 제야지 쇼를 송요할 때 무슨 송요 대나나 로종 시집만 되거나 아니야 뭐야 대나는 마시다게 쇼를 그대로 놓고 전화 로종 시집만 돼 이제 나는 조샤가 이거나 그 준도나 야 오체다요 대산하다 면하자 이 용화쇼 대대지 용화쇼에서 보면나 요 이제 보면 나왔나 신기 근데 소소기 대교를 재미치면 더비나 아예 오는 거야 제가 대대도 전에 나가세 당복 상호당도 전에 어제도 처음에 제발 좀 지치는 이모 손으로 마차를 지나서 뒤에다 다들 좋아하는 신기 로종기 염내인데 몇 사분전에 특정받은 매번 있다 아니야 다가서 그래도 용 내려서 로종도 이거냐 대에다가 가서 예만이를 차렸지 다른 주고 제외에는 내대도 만지도 대에다가 차 아니 다리 부주디 무슨 저가 볼때 제바도 추주주에 다니면서 추주주디 제바도 시에나 삼조디 안다 주주 통도소다 아니 저배고한테 대해서 제가 추주주에 다니시는데 제가 시에 뭐지 아니 뭐 차렸지 로브는 문제만 차렸지 우리 제가 그 사람은 들어오고
So over the last couple of days I've spoken extensively at the beginning of the session about the necessity and benefit of listening to the teaching. So there's no need to go into that in any capacity today. If you could just bring that to mind, then that would be great. So the text that we've been reading over the past couple of days is this advice called the Jewel Rosary, which was written in the 11th century. And within this, even though it's written within the theme of mind training, the actual kind of mind training instructions are not given in a very kind of elaborate or kind of extensive way. Rather, they are implied throughout the text. So this kind of instruction is really meant for somebody who is already engaged in the mind training teaching, even though the kind of main theme of pointing out one's own faults is quite apparent. How to deal with one's destructive emotion is not so clear. So I thought that I would adorn this commentary with a brief instruction on the 8 verses of thought transformation or mind training, as this short 8-stanza text contains the essence of all the mind training instructions. I thought that if I were to offer this to you, and then you have the text in English, if you're able to take it to your respective place and then recite it on a daily basis, then through the force of familiarity, the practice of mind training will become simpler and one will reap more benefit from that. So for that reason, I'll be giving the brief commentary on this 8 verses of mind training. The commentary won't be extensive because there's not the time. We only have a couple of hours together this morning. So with regard to the Jewel Rosary advice, then there's a little bit left. So I'll finish that initially. I would have spoken a little bit at length about the wonderful practice of patience, but as we do not have so much time, then I'll just mention it briefly, because this is a mental state which is extremely important for all of us to develop. And after having done that, then I'll conclude the Jewel Rosary advice and then give the actual mind training instructions.
근데 다 대신하게 비 자친구를 주어 알아도 주연양의 진행에 시작이 되는데 제 친구지. 내가 그때 지금 생주도로 제대로 되는 근데 주연 넘버 담을 왜 시작 갈래고. 내가 그때 지금 근데 주도로 나오는 거. 제 총종기 주도 메로 하면 제 친구 전화에 주도 좀 누구지 총바이나 아니 주연양의 야 오늘은 그래요. 대도자는 제 가듯이 옛날에 텔레 무즈바가 무즈고 어디고 제가 그때 도자네 다 가서 쇼가는데 미셔가지고 소소래야 책념가지고 제라버이나 구마 생년도 제라버이나 야 구마라는 거 구마 되는 누구 말해서 또 한번 샤샤게 와 대샤마도 그지게 구마 가르고 뭐한테 넣어서 봐 저거 저거 봐 저거 저거 무슨 것이라 뭐야 이거야. 제가 대대는 나는 직주골래야 무서워. 나 되는 여자잖아요. 무서워. 아마 여자잖아요. 담마세 바울들에서 가서 주거든요. 그래서 세바이네요. 그 말아도 너무가 되게 레게바사는 게 손을 유고야 하면도 미션바기 내 손을 유고 사와네요. 미션다 기타 되게 센터 소디 메로서 두고르면도 기만 되네. 근데 그거 치마 내 손을 유고 해서 사와네요. 그다 되게 인도단다. 내 손을 뭐 유고 어디서 사와는. 내가 저거 보면은 저게 가래 상담도 좀 제 가르치나요? 내가 같이 제가에는 우주도 같이 좀 나 간지 충분히 저한테 친구들 마저다 오더래 상한테 다 보나 근데 저게 냐는 거. 내 매버지 충분히래 그 도로 마셔 맞지 대랑사 그 제가에는 무조건 용도하래 무조건 용도 콘도 용도하래 저거 용도하면 나랑게 뒤에는 뭐 개발 마을 사실 개발 자원도 되게 폴라다 다들 교회다 투셔 친구가 제가 대대 면접에 제도 저변에 친구가 이렇게
place where we left the teaching yesterday was within which it said continually or always patient. So here when we talk about patience, this is something, a quality of mind which is extremely important to develop. With regard to patience, there is the initial or gross type of patience, which constitutes not retaliating when affronted by others. For example, if somebody speaks harshly to us, perhaps accuses us of a particular crime, calling us a thief, if we just retaliate, if we just sit back and say, well, it's only a word, it doesn't have any bearing on my behavior or conduct, I'm not a thief, but if the person wishes to insult me with such a word, then so be it, it's just a word. And if we just leave it at that, then immediately that situation is nullified. There's no kind of dispute. Whereas if we were immediately to jump up from our chair and say, how dare you insult me in such a way, I'm not a thief, why do you think I'm a thief? And then the person would argue back, and then the argument would escalate out of all control. Whereas if one is just able to reply to such harsh words with a patient attitude, then immediately there is no ground for dispute. Within that groundless state, so to speak, one is able to actually come to the conclusion about the actual reasons for this insult flying around, etc. In just the same way, if somebody was to verbally, not verbally, but physically attack one, then we can, as we mentioned yesterday, just reflect on how they're not killing me at least, and even if they do kill one, if we still react to their violence with a patient attitude, then there's no danger that we will be thrown into the less desirable states of existence, that is to say, the hell, spirit, and animal states of existence, because those states of existence just come about through entertaining destructive emotions. So one can be thrown into those unfortunate states of existence by the undisciplined mind. One cannot be thrown there by an external enemy at all. So this is an extremely important point to ponder upon, and with this as the basis to develop our patience thereupon. Because for us who aspire to practice the Dharma, then if we do not develop this ability to cope with adversity and difficulty, then even the slightest difficulty comes in our Dharma practice or our daily life, and then we're immediately thrown off our spiritual path or spiritual practice. We cannot cope with the situation we find ourselves in. So here, if we are able to develop this kind of patient mindset, then wherever we find ourselves, whatever situation, then we'll always be able to keep a cool head, so to speak, and be able to continue with our spiritual practice. And for the spiritual practitioner, this is of paramount importance.
중도 선제 되면은 치더부지나 도 수거이나 도 소저거 자바 수거이나 자바로 소저거 말아도 미기 도 가요 자바라 그래요 미기 수거에 섬니 뭐 자와도 되는 군지 지기는 도다 주바라 군지 지기 말이야 일단 꽤 대나시 말아도는 미지기 치투라가 있나데 니다담바 있나데 몇번 가요 콩콩도 마셔 에 자와도 콩콩 제가 딱 알아도 막아 제고서 신제 때는 밑에는 막아 제가 콩콩 콩콩이 라마도 그런 라마 매고 콩콩 공기 근데 치투라가 있나데 니다담 있나데 게 인주산에 배나 말아도 도수가 있나데 자와수네 도다 주바데 라마도 미 꿀로 대다 대다서 버사요 뭐 유케게 밑에는 막아 제고 레슨 상담 거 꽤 된다시 밑에게 지금 마다 내다 다야게 몇 번이나 나오면 꼭 컨트롤 그거 있는 말아도 막아와 제가 있는 그 주주 컨트롤 되는 거 같지 아 갑자기 자기는 그 주주 컨트롤 되는 건데죠 그 주주 컨트롤을 가게 잡아내야 근데 지주고 나야 다니다 나는 컨트롤이 체를 두고 내만도 이게 좀 도나 근데 대래 근데 소소 종치샤는 그 주주 컨트롤이 시도 컨트롤 전에 탈때 장기 종해야 되잖아 대인들한테 근데 저거 보고지 바로 주주 컨트롤 시에 더 근데 저거 보야 되잖아 그래서 뭐 그다음 대인들한테 가사 전달직을 하나 변경하고 가르쳐 버리는 가야만 그 녀먹을 나오도 그러고 오메가 녀먹을 나오도 티네 그 저거 멤버들이 저거 있는 그 녀먹을 시에 더 어찌 제가 대인들한테 딱 저거 보말에 하고지 싸워야 돼 대인한테 내기 싸워다니 그래서
If we look at a situation where we have somebody throwing a stone or a rock at a dog, or hitting a dog with a stick, we see that the dog just tries to bite the stone or the stick. But for us humans it's slightly different. If we are hit by a stone or beaten with a stick, we do not look at that inanimate object. We rather look at the wielder of that object, the person who threw the stone or who is holding the stick which is beating us. And we direct our attention towards that person. If we ask why, it's because that person is the wielder of that which is causing us pain, the stone or the stick. But if we look a little deeper, we see that that person in and of themselves is also like an inanimate object. They are completely under the control or domain of the destructive emotion of anger. So this state of mind is then the wielder, and the person becomes like the inanimate object, which is then the stone or stick of which is just an extension. So if we really wish to quell our enemy, we look at the person who is a wielder, who is holding the stick or the stone, and we should look within their mind and see that the real enemy that is bringing about our discomfort is the anger which is in that person's mind. It's that anger which is controlling that individual. So understanding this, we should continually wish to destroy our enemy, but on a more deeper level. Here then perhaps the word destroy is too harsh a word. Perhaps to quash or to quell would be a better term, in the sense that if we were to remove the anger from that person's mind, then there would no longer be the enemy of the physical form holding the stick or the stone, which is the direct implement which is harming us. So the way to then quell this anger is not to kind of attack it with a stick or with a weapon, but rather is just to reply with patience. This patience then is likened to cooling water, which is then poured over raging fire of anger, immediately putting out that raging discomfort of dissatisfaction of anger. So here the patient attitude is one which can thoroughly destroy enemy at its deepest level. Deepest level referring to the very cause, or the causal factor, which wields a human being powerless to engaging in negative action. The manifestation of which may be the beating of ourselves or the hitting of ourselves by a stone thrown by such an individual. So then one should chase this right back down to its source, which is the destructive emotion of anger, and one should work at quelling or destroying that as opposed to wasting one's time on focusing on externals. This is elaborated upon in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he says there would never be an end to external enemies, dealing with external enemies. So rather, it would be better to quell the foothold which would allow the interaction with an enemy to escalate. Just as one would never be able to cover the whole world with leather, but one can avoid stepping upon the thorny ground by just covering one's feet. So if we look at the latter part of the quotation, if we think of the world and we think how pathways are quite thorny and quite rough and how it harms our feet or causes us discomfort when we walk on them, if we were to just focus externally without recourse to looking at ourselves and think, well, these pathways, etc., bushways, forests, are really rather unpleasant. So I'll cover the whole world in leather so that I'll have a smooth place to walk. Of course, this idea is absurd. We would never be able to cover the whole world in leather to allow us a comfortable passage. However, if we were just to cover the soles of our feet with leather, then wherever we go, we would experience walking on that leather. So in just the same way, it's impossible to quell each and every sentient being externally. So how is one to deal with individuals who, for no apparent reason, or perhaps with some reason, attack or wish to harm us? Here, if we have developed love and patience within our being, then no matter what kind of difficulties such individuals would like to give us, there is no foothold for that. There is no fuel for that fire of anger. So immediately one has quashed one's enemy, just as if one doesn't put fuel on a fire, the kindling will just burn out of itself. So in the same way, if one doesn't retaliate with the fuel of fire, fuel offering that to the fire, then there is no blazing bonfire. It would in and of itself diminish. So that is how one can deal with all of one's enemies in one single blow, by developing this mind of loving concern and patience for them, so that their anger has no foothold or ground within one's being.
가보지 텐데잖아. 아니 야고야 말이지. 생각 빨리 세발이야. 할래야 요 말이지. 생각 그러나 그러다네. 할래야 가요 말이지. 지금 그거 네트디 나 따고려만 빨리 세발다 비디오서 가는 텐데 제발이나. 대부요고요. 산로 메시지 민니발에 미사바델이 비시라게 앞살 왜 깨지나 앞살 제가 미사바델이 시라게 가보지 민니발에 봐 가보시 해주잖아. 아니 야고 뭐야. 이 종라고 세미네. 나만 가보 여가게 그런 가보 들어가지. 근데 사발을 들어가지. 이체를 뭐 맞이를 다지지. 근데 저 다 손을 주고 자. 가비에는 소소비 소생고 연구야 저거. 얘는 예를 매제신수 강사 현달에야 냠주도 그치. 저랑 가인 많이 다보게 저랑 쪼버려도 저랑 연대요 말인데 다 대대게 되는데 진예스도 저는 그렇게 통통 치수해서 안돼 되는 중요. 얘는 예벌 빵자시. 얘는 예벌 빵세도 얘는 예벌 파빵네. 얘는 예벌 맞제버제네. 아니 저거. 얘는 예벌 빵자시. 주변 수지 내가 자. 강사 제가 반대지에는 그 그거다. 아니 최공라고 제네. 아니 내가 지고 그랬어. 근데 되게 뭐하면도 역주 제네. 내가 오늘 말했어. 주변 수지 내가 자.
So going back to the root text, the last stanza on the third page. I shall not be fickle in any relationship with others, but remain firm. Give up any form of humiliating others and to always respect them. So here then, being fickle with regard to one's relationship, this can refer to any type of relationship which one has with others. One should, after having started a relationship, here relationship could mean being friends with somebody, etc. So when one has that, one should, as much as possible, remain steadfast in one's appreciation for and trust in one's friends, and then become a good kind of stable friend with others, and not be kind of fickle in the sense of kind of being very friendly with somebody, and then when somebody else comes along, dropping all of one's old friends and running off with the new ones, only to abandon them later and run off with the other friends, etc. One should be kind of firm in one's relationship with other friends. One should likewise abandon any form of humiliation, insulting others, perhaps kind of deriding them because of their poor qualities or because of their wealth, etc. Whatever form of humiliation one would perhaps utilize as an insult should be left to one side, and as much as possible one should continually respect and help others as much as one can. So last page, whenever I give advice to others, I shall do so with sincerity and sympathy. I should abandon any disrespect for other forms of spiritual practice and appreciate whatever religious tradition or spiritual practice others are interested in. So here when one is asked for advice and one responds to that request, one shouldn't just force one's own views upon others, but rather taking into consideration the disposition of one who is asked for advice. One should, with great concern, care, sincerity and sympathy, answer such an individual's question, wishing them only kind of well-being and answering their request for advice in a way which is in accord with their mental and physical disposition. Abandoning disrespect for other forms of spiritual practice. Here this refers principally to deriding other forms of a spiritual practice or religious tradition, saying that the one I possess is best of all, and everything else is terrible. So here, if one has that attitude, what will happen to the person who's listening to your discourse is that, at worst, they will think, who is this arrogant person, deriding everything else and putting themselves forward as being the unique spiritual teacher. Here then, that's at worst. Or perhaps doubt creeping into that person's mind, thinking, oh, is this really worthwhile listening to or not? And if somebody generates such doubt towards something as wonderful as these mind training teachings, then it's not a really healthy position or predicament to have put somebody in. So therefore, when you give advice and when you give teaching, then one should always take into consideration others' disposition and whatever angle they are coming from whatever religious or spiritual background or tradition, then one should take that into consideration and appreciate that and answer with care and concern so as to be of service to those who come to one for spiritual advice and counsel. Section goes on to read, I shall remain within the practice of the 10 virtues, day and night, I shall dedicate whatever virtues I have done in the past, do now, and will do in the future, to the benefit of all other sentient beings. So here, there are a variety of explanations of what is meant by the 10 virtuous activities. Here in general, we can say the 10 virtuous actions, which we know in general, the opposites of the 10 destructive actions which we went through on the first day. But also there are different explanations of what constitute these 10 activities. And if we look in the great Indian commentaries on the intent of the fully enlightened one, we find 2. One is known as the ornament for clear realization, which is a condensation of the meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, the Apasamayanukara, and also the differentiation of the center and extremes, both of these by Maitreya and Sangha. Here we find the kind of 10 activities elaborated upon in different 10 virtuous activities elaborated upon in different ways as quintessential instructions and meditation instructions and so forth. But if we were to kind of go through each and every one of them, or enumerating them, it would just be a collection of words. The reason is because what is behind those words are huge sections of those particular commentaries, and as we are individuals who do not, for one, have the time, and secondly, have had the experience of really coming to grips with the Buddhist philosophical tradition, it would just be kind of a just plain game, word game. So basically, if we were to condense this down to the kind of virtuous practice of day and night, this refers then to hearing about the teaching or reading books, thinking about the meaning thereof, and then meditating upon that to the best of one's ability. Then, remaining within that, whatever kind of virtues actually one has gleaned, and in addition to that, whatever virtue one has done in the past and will do in the future, one should gather that all together and then dedicate this to the final enlightenment of all sentient beings. So with that dedication, one should seal whatever practice one has done, and if one is able, then one should practice for the day and the night, or at least half the day and half the night, because we have to eat, we have to do other activities, we have to work, we have to go to sleep, etc. It doesn't mean we should abandon the spiritual practice at that time, but we do need to take into consideration these daily activities and make time for them, and make time for being within the confines of a pure spiritual practice. Through performing the seven-limb prayer, one prays for the happiness, well-being of all other sentient beings. So here the seven-limb prayer is the complete prayer, so to speak, and within this we find 7 different practices of prostration, confession is the usual translation, but real meaning is that one is tearing out all one's previously accrued negative action, regretting and laying it bare before one's particular object of refuge. So what comes before that is making an offering, so it's prostrating or act of homage, an offering. Then there's tearing out or regretting of previously accrued negative action. Then there is rejoicing. Rejoicing refers to feeling happy about not only one's own positive action, but also about the positive action of all sentient beings. After that, there is the request for those fully enlightened ones who are not turning the Dharma wheel or teaching to turn the Dharma wheel and to teach. Those who are about to show the aspect of passing away, not to pass away. And then finally sealing this with a dedication, dedicating this positive potential of one's virtuous conduct and activity for the benefit of all other sentient beings. The next section goes on to read, "Thus I will be able to accomplish the merit of wisdom and skillful means, will be able to eliminate all delusions, for in this way I shall be able to attain enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Thus I will be able to achieve great meaning from finding this precious human rebirth." So if one is able to engage in wholesome spiritual pursuits, reciting this seven-limb prayer, meditating upon this seven-limb attitude, therethrough one accrues both merit and wisdom, and these two then serve as the primary causes, giving rise to then the form and the truth body of the fully enlightened one. Through these collections of merit and wisdom, one purifies the two obstacles to achieving complete and perfect Buddhahood, that is to say, the kind of gross and the subtle obstructions. Gross here then refers to the destructive emotions, which are the principal obstacle to achieving the state of nirvana, or lesser liberation, whereas the kind of principal obstacle to achieving the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood are the subtle imprints left by those destructive emotions. So it's imperative to remove both of these, the gross and the subtle, in order to achieve the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood, and this is done through making the collection of meritorious action or good action and understanding as nature or the accumulation of truth.
point more than Sidu, and what they did more than Sansenda, Ruda, Noju, and it's true. But that would be but Patane, Sinjanam, and you, remember Puberty, remember the Torque, what that didn't do over here upon it, Sinjay Punjab, point. Tribute nor receipt. Tribute nor Sidu, Rangi the Nebe Dhamma, Kari and Ranga Yamana, Dhamma, Tanju Rangi, and Bayan, Jonkabu, and the Tavana Japan, and other to be Nishigi, Tribute. Tribute 20 years. Then is some of them. Then you home, other game to them, tribute. Say, what's a ship in those indeed? Now, children in the chip, a car that had to tell us. Then now, tell you said, is yank and then in Miguel and Sabatella, tell you about us. That's it. That is, again, we give it to a Chibayana, Sunday the Changes of Tomorrow City or talk about so much about the city or then Diluma is something. Yank and then in Miguel and Sabatella, tell you. Mocha Sheba said, but how do you Miguel and Sabatella? Abe Janju Ramje and Benami, and Ramje and Benamit. The one that you wrote on and Yanet immediately. Here you near Tiba Miguel and Kumuma Sunday. Raju the Miguel and Sabatella, tell you about us. Shut up till the North June days and shut up so you that. Should have the Namdi. Should have the Namdi shut up. I shut up the should of the Namdi Kibbutz. Unzo Grandambe. Demania of the Teni and Nero of Tudulia, the big Kibbutz and the Fondu Chuba Kibbutz, Chura the Namdi Tele, and the Sheriff of us. Sheriff need the Northern Noja Tamadani, Mazeba in Northern Day, Northern and the Chodu Juba, Saba may be Northern. Maram did it was not in a Broadway, said over. Wrong to the Sebra. Now, Papa not do with it, Saba Yom, on the top of it. Sanji to go mother to what the geometry to the word, Sanji to go on content, Tarkoba and the Sabayo. Sabayo not really, Mimay and geometry has into one. Mimay said, one of the Neve Shalom baby, Jada today, Mimay and Atisha meet and every true that have been ended and reduced. Sure, you keep me later, my yes, and me, sure, Tabata de Bamayibala, and it did I over this. You can't be my center. You go down to the big point, never, Marathon, Kennedy, taking you out to do my sword to the net into my listen. The money and I said, me, but I are sure that Tabayo of me, and then he said, son of a woman, I just today,
The next section is the enumeration of the 7 gems that adorn the minds of the Bodhisattva. So here then the layout is as follows: the gem of faith. Here then faith being a kind of trust in the teaching of the spiritual teaching of the 4 truths, the 2 truths, and what have you, and within that, that's the appreciation of the 3 jewels of refuge, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The second is the order in the Tibetan is a little different to the actual of the Tibetan. The second is the gem of ethics. Here, ethical discipline refers to abiding within the kind of ethics of the particular country's code, and also the kind of ethics or ethical conduct to the followers of the fully enlightened one. The gem of generosity refers to offering charity as much as possible to all sentient beings. Fourthly is the gem of contemplation. Contemplation here then refers to listening to discourse or teaching, and then understanding that or reading about that, and thinking about its application to oneself. Fifth is then the gem of instruction. So instruction here refers to instruction about the spiritual path, and knowing that instruction, when one, through the force of prior habituation, kind of engages again in negative action, then kind of feeling of kind of embarrassment, thinking, oh, I've received this instruction and I'm not able to really live up to the kind of teaching. This is kind of not really so good. So kind of recognizing when one has kind of done a negative deed, and not getting caught up in a guilt trip, but rather recognizing that, regretting it, and continuing on with one's spiritual practice. Next is the gem of modesty, always taking a humble stance, thinking that I'm an individual who wishes to engage in the practice of the mind training, or perhaps in a more elaborate form, the graduated stages of the path, the elaborate, or in a more elaborate form than that, the great 5 treatises, the great 5 shastras, such as commentaries on perfection of wisdom, sutras, a middle way view, etc. And understanding those, and training one's mind according to that, so that when one strays from those instructions, thinking, oh, I've kind of studied these texts in the presence of these kind of great masters, received teaching, well, this isn't very good at all, feeling a sense of shame and modesty about one's behavior, moving on. Then lastly then is the gem of wisdom, which arises from the former 6. Wisdom here then refers to direct understanding of the subject matter as that dawns within one, then being adorned with that. The last line then goes on to, that stanza goes on to read, these 7 gems have limitless virtuous qualities in general, when we talk about treasures, gems and wealth and so forth. These are limited in the sense that they will finish at some time or another. However, if one has these 7 gems with one at all time, they will remain limitless. They will remain without a decline. So one should practice these oneself, as the next line reads, when I practice these inner gems myself, I should not reveal any of these to those who are not yet mature to practice these excellent qualities. So here what this means, the actual word in Tibetan is non-human. So here basically the idea is not a particular kind of ghost or particular kind of spirit that one should reveal these teachings to. Rather, a non-human here then refers to a person, a human who's not a suitable recipient of such instruction. Because if we like such teaching and we want to tell everybody about it, if people are not really interested, then they'll just think we're some kind of crazy person. Why is this person always going on about this particular instruction? And no matter how well we explain the particular teaching to others, people will just react with hostility, thinking, oh, I wish you to shut up. So in order to avoid that, one should really practice the essence of the teaching by oneself and develop the qualities internally oneself without wishing to kind of rush around teaching or shouting about this to others. So the last section then says, I shall be heedful of my speech in the presence of others, and be heedful of my thoughts in isolation from others. So here, to explain this, which is the kind of essence of all the previous given advice, explaining the words, then explaining it from a different angle. Whenever one is in a gathering, one should watch one's speech. One shouldn't just blurt out everything one knows, because one can accrue a great amount of negative action through this kind of gossiping away, or kind of turning out all of one's inner thoughts, etc. And when alone, one is then advised not to let one's mind run wild, but rather to focus on one's mind, to look at it all the time, and look at what is arising within one's mind. When one sees destructive thoughts arising, one should immediately counter them and then apply the respective antidote. So there's a different way of looking at this. We can say that one's form should be in lonely places, in solitude. One's mind, one's speech should be in solitude from others, in that one keeps quiet when in the company of others. And then one's mind should be kept in isolation, or in the lonely place of examining itself, not distracted by too many external thoughts. So if one is able to do that, then one will be able to progress well in the spiritual practice. So that concludes our commentary on this advice, known as the dual Rosary for the Bodhisattva. So now we'll move on to this text, 8 verses of mind transformation, which you have, I believe. So the first verse reads, by thinking of all sentient beings as even better than the wish-granting gem, for accomplishing the highest aim, might I always consider them precious. So here then, when we look at this first verse, it points out the subject, oneself, and a subject, oneself, and then the object, all sentient beings, and one's attitude towards those other sentient beings. Thinking of all of them, whether one is directly encountering others or mentally bringing others to mind, thinking of them as better than the wish-granting gem. What is a wish-granting gem, you may wonder? So this is the highest of all jewels. It is said that if one has this wonderful jewel, one can make a petition to it and seize all the dissatisfaction of this life, can bring about all of one's wishes, as the title suggests, wish-granting gem, for within this short lifetime. But what is even better than that are all sentient beings. Why? Because it depends upon other sentient beings, whether directly or indirectly. One can accomplish the highest aim of complete and perfect Buddhahood. So for that reason then, one should consider all sentient beings as something extremely precious, like the wish-granting gem. For in dependence upon others, one can achieve the state of complete and perfect Buddhahood.
알아서서 세계 대다 탐제에 매마 주도에 줘 임바지 딱도 돼서 아니 그는 멘다시 아니 세계 대다 탐제에 아니 매마이 왔다 얘라 삼바 타바이 초도 찍었던 거죠 나를 주타되게 세계 도도에 가장 친정 많이 인 타바니 시다야 오래 삼비는 초도 주가 되는 사치도 기본 제도가 좋아서
The second scenario then reads, wherever I go, and with whomever I go, may I see myself as less than all others, and from the depth of my heart, may I consider them supremely precious. So here then, this refers to completely going against the grain of our usual attitude, where we think of ourselves as being better than everybody else. Here, what the instruction is that seeing the qualities of others, wherever one finds oneself, and with whomever one is in the company of, may I see myself as less than all others. That is to say, not dwelling on one's qualities, but focusing on the qualities of others, and not in a contrived way, but rather in an uncontrived way, from the very depth of one's heart, but considering others as something very precious.
sempre give to the root of a give us and a root of that is this. I know me, Roger, Gudona, you must have a Jamata Lamson, and they take it Ryan Margoma Chigari, as I can die in Margoma Chigari, they in the Tani, they are only the Butani, with Jamata Lamson, Cambodian, go to the Chet. Yes. Does he have Canisa Margoma Chigo and Senna? No more Jesona? No more deal on the Juba Chinjology. Juba Chinjology, the Teledane, Masajandaki, Semlaya, Namdo, Nebate, no more deal. That's a little, and then Rajin Nivalo, the Maguma Chati, no more deal, no more on the Diba Miguel on the court, on that the Chava Yinta, that Nivalo, and the Diba Miguel Lessa, and the Chava Yinta, Maguma Chico. They no more Tematani, Kobe. Yes, and the dear Majuba Jenny, simple oil of Jenny, Yamatanema, and the God Dodo Chip. Dodo Karchep was a region to say the Aki, Jaja Chigutona, and he will do go home. Then Sinjay and Mogo and Teleshanta Chifona are then for a 20 years, Java. No judge hold. Then I soon have a year one to over in a little bit grand chopper, grand to over in a grand to the Salonana, and it will be no just shooting with the kitchen. Tala Rogina, Tala Tana, over in a 2000 for a 20 year, 20 Salonana Shavayana, for the judge hold. Tana, she does say, what be the 그래서 누구가 이제 얘도 뭐가 되는데 세상에 뭐 근데 그 세상에 어느 사람이 그 야고 제사를 차지 사는 다음에는 그 세상에 추총 맞다 제가 대대 얘도 사는데 내가 사람들 정도 제대로 이제 그 누가 이제 팬도 가요 내가 집에서 사는 다음에도 그것도 사는 거로 내가 집에서 사는 마다한테는 그 팬다 같아서 사는 다음에 그것도 뭐 대지 잘 친구 살아가나 포도가 제모도 되는 거예요. 제가 돈에 도와줘. 그 감지 연구나 상관도 되는
The third verse goes on to read, may I examine my mind in all actions, and as soon as a negative state occurs, since it endangers myself and others, may I firmly face and avert it. So here then, one should utilize the faculty of mindfulness and introspection, looking at one's mind in all situations whether one is sitting, whether one is lying down, whether one is walking, whatever action one is involved in, one should be continually mindful of what is going on within the confines of one's thoughts. Why, you may wonder? For as soon as a negative state occurs, one should firmly face this and avert it. Why? Because it endangers oneself and others. So here then, we think of the destructive nature of these these negative states of mind. For example, desirous attachment, anger, and so forth. If they're allowed into our being, then they will just wreck not only our own peace of mind, but also those around us. For entertaining such destructive states of mind only brings about a negative consequence or negative action, thus then endangering not only oneself, that is to say, one gives into or gives rise to a destructive action or generates negative karmic action, but also for others. Others then develop hostility towards oneself. If they're not spiritually mature, develop anger and what have you within their mind stream towards us. So in a sense, we are responsible for their well-being as well. So in order to negate this, what we should do is utilize the practice of mindfulness so that when these destructive emotions start to arise, immediately we face and avert them. Face by applying mindfulness, and then avert by, at the moment of their arisal, applying the respective antidote. So how to do this? Initially one notices the arisal of the destructive emotion, distances oneself from it, and then at that moment applies the antidote to that object which causes it to kind of collapse atop itself. If you wonder what is meant by that, for example, if we think of desirous attachment towards an animate or an inanimate object, whatever the form may be, when one has this desirous attachment, what we notice is that we exaggerate the particular quality of that object, whether it be beautiful, we exaggerate the beauty of that, so much so that we're continually applying layer and layer of exaggeration upon that until it's exaggerated or distorted out of all perception. So this is what is meant by to being attached to the object. One exaggerates a specific quality and then just dwells on that. So in order to quell that, one should think of the faults of that particular object. There's no object that is completely perfect. One should think of, for example, an inanimate object. We should think of the downside of having such an object, or whether it's an animate object. For example, if we're attached to or obsessed with a partner's form, then we should consider the dirty side of the particular form, or look at it from different angles. There's bound to be faults with regard physical form, faults in the sense of we can look at the internal organs, at the dirty aspect of the form, etc. And through that, take care of our mind by firmly facing and averting this destructive emotion of desire. Same with anger, when we come into contact with an individual, or an animate or inanimate object, which causes us displeasure by basically not fitting in with our vision of how that object should be or how that person should act. We get hostile towards that object. So here then, in order to quell that, we should cultivate an attitude which is able to distance oneself from the object and then dwell upon the good qualities of that particular object, and therefore quell the anger as soon as it arises.
근데 왜 야고래 야고 이거도 누구 누가 이거 한 먹으면 라진 게왜 생겼지? 근데 디베트로 동네 수잡고 너가 통했잖아. 근데 다 소소들에서 뭐 제대로 잡아내지 깨버가고 디베트 반점을 잘했잖아. 해탈을 해도지. 해도주도 고주다 매버가 라진 해봐야겠다. 해배는 너가 제일고서 너가 제일도 야야 저거고 근데 제주 라진도 저거지. 근데 공세도 좀 좋고. 그다음 되게 이제 때가 얘는 무지에 이제 때리게다. 시라기에 가서 소소를 펴고 좀 보여라. 옛날에 브라질 내가 인바다. 아니 디벤트도 동만 잡고 녀비 기분도 통했잖아. 내가 소소가 펴고 지도 다제 펴고 전에 풀이 너가 제가 했다. 소소 지면 내가 전에 야 내가 제대로 제약이 그거 통과 인도다네. 되는 신진진기 로 공회도 동화다. ranjingi rodema wonyaaki thaphe chotu chobati ruguyo yintani yebarkari jinjin sho ochi.
The fourth verse reads, when I see beings of a negative disposition or those oppressed by negativity or pain, may I, as if finding a treasure, consider them precious, for they are rarely met. Here when we talk about mind training, practicing the kind of spiritual development, it's very easy when we're in a conducive environment. But when we're out of such an environment, dealing with people, then it can be the case that we meet individuals who are of an extremely nasty disposition, really terrible, nasty, horrible people. When we see these people whose mindset is so obscured by destructive emotion, or perhaps they're undergoing some great mental or physical illness or pain. When we encounter such coarse individuals, then for those who really wish to practice the mind training tradition, this individual becomes like a wish-fulfilling jewel. Here then, as if finding a treasure, something which one considers extremely precious. Precious then refers to something which is seldom met. So we say things are precious in the world because they are rare. So if we meet someone who is very averse to us, it gives us a great chance then to really practice the teachings which we've read, heard and contemplated about so much. For example, meditation on patience, meditation on turning away from engaging in destructive emotions, etc. So to meet with such an individual who gives one the very chance to engage in such a practice is something really wonderful. Therefore, such an individual who's given one such a chance should be held as something precious, because such an individual is quite hard to find. verse 5 reads, whenever others, due to their jealousy, rebel and treat me in unjust ways, may I accept this defeat myself and offer the victory to others. So here then, when one encounters others who, owing to their jealousy, rebel and treat one in unjust ways, perhaps insulting one or accusing one of doing things which one hasn't done, etc., then how does one to react to those individuals? Here, if one just keeps very quiet and just accepts whatever insults, etc., or kind of difficulties which others have made for one, one keeps a very quiet, low, humble stance, and then says, yeah, okay, whatever you say is perfectly right. No problem whatsoever. You insult me, all you like, and just remains very firm within that stance. What actually occurs on a deeper level is that, for a start, within one's mind, one is practicing the mind transformation, training the mind. Training the mind here then to destroy the cause of all one's difficulty, that is to say, the self-cherishing mind, a mind which focuses upon oneself and wishing well for oneself at the expense of all others. So this then, what really investigates is the cause of all of one's dissatisfaction, whereas the mind which is the opposite of that which cherishes others' well-being above one's own, is the cause of all happiness and well-being for oneself. What to talk about the kind of result of a spiritual practice, even in a temporary sense. This brings one a great mental relief and comfort. So through, as the last two lines read, accepting this defeat by saying, yes, whatever you say is perfectly right, one is not entertaining the self-cherishing thought at all. And then if one offers the victory to others, that yes, you're right, you're better than I am, whatever you say is kind of the best, etc., then one is cherishing others more than oneself. So through changing this attitude in a very specific circumstance, one then progresses with one's mind training, and through this progression, one then moves on the kind of spiritual path. The sixth verse goes on to read, when someone in whom I have helped, or in whom I have placed great hope, harms me with great injustice, may I see that one as a sacred friend. Here then, if one has an associate or a friend upon which one has heaped help, aid, etc., and in whom one has placed one's trust, if such an individual then turns upon one and harms one with great injustice, as the line reads, then in general we would retaliate with great hostility towards such a person, saying, how can you possibly repay the kindness I have showered upon you with this kind of unjust and awful behavior? So here then, for a practitioner of spiritual mind training, such an individual sees that person as not the source or cause of one's anger and hostility, but rather as somebody who is illustrating the essencelessness of the cycle of existence, or the kind of uncertainty with regard to existence under the domain of destructive emotion and karma rule, and thereby viewing somebody in such a way gives one a great chance to lessen one's self-cherishing by letting go of that situation and saying, well, this is just something which has happened, never mind, let's kind of move on from this. So then not dwelling on the kind of negative state of that person, rather looking at them as a great spiritual friend or sacred friend, one who has pointed or shown one barely or nakedly the self-cherishing mind, so that one can have a good look at it and see how one is reacting to that, and in addition has shown us the lack of certainty or the kind of essencelessness of the cycle of existence quite openly. So in that regard, such an individual is a great friend to one, somebody who's really shown one kind of the meaning of that which is to be abandoned with regard to spiritual training.